So it's my honor to invite President Mary Robinson, co-president of the Africa Arab Foundation, former president of Ireland, and chair of the elders, up to the stage, and for a conversation with Bora Kamwanya, who's the vice president of the Pan-African Youth Union and member of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, Now Generation Network. So please, on stage. Thank you.
Bora, we're going to have a great conversation.
I hope you give us more time.
Let me just begin with a saying that Kofi Annan used to use a lot as chair of the elders. You are never too young to lead, and you are never too old to learn. And I want to illustrate, actually I want to clarify, I am no longer chair of the elders. A week ago at an elders meeting, we meet twice a year, I stood down from the chair to become an active elder, which I've always been, and I will continue to be, but Juan Manuel Santos, the former president of Colombia, has become the new chair of the elders. Good governance, and we're very happy about it. But the elders have come out with long view leadership, and I've been sort of asked to relate that to the new commission, which is coming into play, and in early February, the Africa Union will have a new commission. What do we mean by the long view leadership? Maybe I should just spell out the kind of 5 principles of it, and then I want to show that we elders also learn and adapt, because we have changed our long view leadership. We have modified it in an important way, which is relevant to Bora's perspective. The long view leadership that we want is that because we have existential threats, the climate and nature crisis, the nuclear weapons crisis, the pandemic crisis, the role of artificial intelligence in our world, and so on, we want leaders to think beyond short-term political cycles and deliver solutions for both current and future generations, to recognize that enduring answers require compromise and collaboration for the good of the whole world. We want leaders to show compassion for all people, so designing sustainable policies which respect that everyone is born free and equal in dignity and rights. Fourthly, to uphold the international rule of law and accept that durable agreements require transparency and accountability. And lastly, to commit to a vision of hope in humanity's shared future, not play on its divided past. So we were urging this long view leadership, but we have also, as elders, been taking part in a lot of intergenerational conversations. If you go onto the website of the elders, theelders.org, you will see blogs by young climate activists and other activists, a lot of conversations, and we intensified this at the UN General Assembly. Every panel I was on as an elder, and that was true of other elders, it was intergenerational. And we realized that our long view leadership, stemmed from our wisdom and experience, if you like, but it was a bit top down. So we have clarified that this long view leadership also wants co-creation with other generations. And I think that's part of leadership, that we want to listen to your vision, Bora. Africa is a very young continent with very old leadership at the top. I think, just to complete a link with the panel, the ideas on this panel today were exactly what the elders are looking for in long view leadership for Africa and Europe. There's no doubt about it. But let me get your perspective on this co-creation now we're going to encourage.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me? Oh, perfect. Thank you. Wow, loud voice. Thank you so much. I think it's very important to have a long view leadership. You've mentioned it. Africa is a very young continent with a very, I don't want to say old and get anybody upset, but older generation of leaders. And we are seeing that this trend is creating a disconnect between what needs to be done for tomorrow and what's being done today. We have on the continent, national councils, which are representing youth voices in different countries on the continent. Out of the 54 countries in the AU, only 41 have national councils. So not even all of them have a national council.
Still 41 have, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good, but then look at what they consider as young. I mean, I'm 31. We consider at the AU a young person to be 35, all the way to 35. But some countries it goes to 45, 50. And I don't know how young you are at 50. You're useful maybe, but perhaps not young. So, you know, and as I was introduced as the now generation. I think at 31, my task is to prepare the next generation. And this actually goes in the long view leadership that the elders are putting forward. What's even more important is to look at how the young people are influencing the societal changes on the continent. And since we're talking about the future of Africa-Europe partnership, we also need to listen to those African young people, which is, to my taste, it's not what's happening right now. If you look at West Africa and what has been happening, we are all very appalled by unconstitutional changes, but we need to look at in what they are rooted in. We need to look at the friendship that Africa and Europe have been having in the last 60 years since the independence era. We need to look at the relationship that Africa has been having with Europe and the relationship that Europe has been having with Africa. And I feel like we're not talking about this enough. I feel like we're looking at what can we do for tomorrow? Let's talk about AI. Let's talk about the climate crisis. If we're talking about the climate crisis and we talk about the world burning, we need to look at and actually ask ourselves, who's going to be, at first, where's the water coming from to set out the fire? Who's going to be carrying the buckets? And whose house are we saving first? And for far too long, Africa has been the one providing with the water. Africa has been the one carrying the bucket and putting out the fire in Europe and not at home. And I think the long view leadership should be asked at looking at how the young people of Africa look at this relationship.
So you agree that the partnership between Africa and Europe is still not a fully respectful partnership, that there's more to be done?
Absolutely. It's not a partnership of equal, or I wouldn't really even call it a partnership of friends, if I'm honest. And I'm very encouraged by the former Minister of Foreign Minister of Spain, who was here earlier. She was very candid and very honest, so I'm also going to take the same stand, being candid and honest. I mean, the recent, you know, my father was born in 1958. My country, DRC, was independent, gained independent in 1960. My father was raised by parents who saw the white man as the closest thing to God. And then my father could only teach me that, right? But 30 years after the independence, we have a generation that's being experiencing colonialism by proxy through our parents. 60 years after independence, we have a generation that's connected. We have access to information all over the world, and we are asking for, we're demystifying history.
Yeah.
We are asking for reparation, and that's when we find out that we are actually not on the same boat, and the priorities are not the same.
And to what extent is your Pan-African Youth Council heard by the African Union, for example? Do you have a good dialogue there? Do you get access?
The good thing with the national councils, which are members of the Pan-African Youth Union, is that they are connected with their government. They're listened to. Now, the Pan-African Youth Union is looking for further cooperation with the African Union. We are working on a new MOU. The last one expired in 2018. We're looking for a new one, which will give us the opportunity to actually work directly with the African Union Commission, which will give us the opportunity to actually drive the changes that African youth want. Is the relationship good right now? It can be better. Trying to be diplomatic.
I'm interested that, you know, you're talking about, you're 31. and you're talking about making way for younger.
Do I look 31?
I'm 80. Do I look 80? Anyway, you're already thinking about, having a voice for younger. I really like that. I think, I was glad to step back from the chair because we need to make space. We need to have the real co-creation with different generations. That is something the elders are very strongly of the view. We are not going to get the different perspectives unless we have them at the table, at the decision-making table, and expressing exactly the kind of views that you're expressing, the sense of coming out from a colonial relationship. I come from a country that was colonized. We joke in Ireland that when the financial crisis hit us very badly in 2008, that was probably when we totally got out of the colonial relationship, because we realized that a lot of the problems had been self-inflicted. We'd created our own problems. We couldn't blame that big neighbor next door. That was a growing up moment, but it took us a long time. It takes a long time to come out from, and it's so important to kind of assert that strong sense that this is Africa's time. Africa is going to be the most populated continent. One of the things I liked about the panel earlier was talking properly about the demographics. We have an aging Europe. We have a young, very rapidly growing Africa. That should be something we talk about in very positive terms as to how we create the long view leadership to deal with that, pathways to legitimate access and real access and circular access and all kinds of different ways of dealing with this problem as something that can be positive for both. And yet, this isn't the way the discussion goes. Europe is becoming more of a fortress. More people are dying trying to cross the Mediterranean or cross the British Channel, for that matter.
Absolutely, and it's important you're mentioning the demographic trends. The UN is expecting that Africa will be 2.5 billion inhabitants by 2050. If we look at what happened in 2020 with the COVID, as you can remember, when we're getting close to getting the vaccine, a lot of young people in Africa were very reluctant to try the vaccine, to even be vaccinated. And this is, again, rooted in our shared experience with European, right? One of the word was, and this was WhatsApp groups you get from aunties and uncles back home, do not try the vaccine, they're trying to kill us, and so on and so forth. I got vaccinated, I wanted to be vaccinated, that was my choice. And I encouraged everyone to be vaccinated, but I also understand the mistrust. So if we're thinking of 2.5 billion people in 2050, there's gonna be 2.5 billion people not trusting each other, not trusting the big neighbor in the north. And that's challenging. We need to address that, which is why, as we are planning for the future, we also need to look at what about yesterday? What did we do wrong? And can we actually reparate what was done? A quick example is the discussion that we are having in the diaspora, especially, and we're very big on that. This is repatriation of artifacts. Imagine me asking my friend to give me back an heirloom that his granddad took from a granddad, and he tells me, I can lend it to you if you want. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, this belongs to me. Yeah. And I think once we have settled this question of the past was a mistake, what was done was wrong, and we all agree. I mean, in Africa, we own up to it. We were colonized, right? And can Europeans say, we colonized, it was bad, we'll reparate, and we'll repatriate anything that was, that's also part of the long view.
Well, as well as that issue, what about the honesty? I mean, there was reference to the AU-EU summit in February 2020, but there wasn't reference to what happened immediately afterwards. The war in Ukraine, and Europe suddenly wanted to grab the gas and completely change, and then the lack of equity in the pandemic. The fact that Africa, to its great credit, managed to come together on the issue, but at great cost, because there was not an equitable access. And we still haven't got a new pandemic treaty. We're still not learning the lessons from COVID. So I think we need very honest conversations. And I agree with you. I think Arantxa needs to speak out more and more as a professor now. We just need to have a real sense of how linked Africa and Europe are, and how important at this point in time, under new leadership for both, that we forge, that we regroup to where we were in that summit in 2020. It's hard because there is a distrust. I know it from my African friends. It's hard to bridge that because of what, especially after the war in Ukraine broke out, the way that Europe, and also the way Europe dealt with the refugees from Ukraine, and the swinging of ODA into paying for that in their countries, and so on. So I think we need to, in particular, because of the overnight news, we're going to face a much more difficult relationship with a United States, with Trump back, with worse advisors, if I may say so, clearly going to play a very hard line in Africa and America's interests. And this will be difficult for Europe. It will be particularly difficult for Africa. We have every reason, therefore, to look to the long view leadership and actually forge in the way that we were doing in February 2020. Just remember, and the ingredients are there. I thought the panel spoke to those ingredients. I actually think it is important that we have the monetary reform that changes the seats at the table, that has a real sense of the world moving to the world of 2025, not 1945. And Europe should be very much trying to be part of that. From your perspective, Bora, and I'm aware that we're probably running out of time at this stage, how do you see Europe being more of a respectful, real partner to young Africans like you?
Well, I think, if I may bring us back to 2017, we had the last impactful Africa, so AU-EU Youth Summit.
2017
in Abidjan. We came up with the Abidjan Declaration, which influenced a lot of policies that DG INPA, I think, was taking. But that was the last one. After that, we didn't have any major African, and that was actually organized by the Pan-African Youth Union and the European Youth Forum. So the two main youth organizations in both continents. And that's how you show respect to young people. You listen to what they're telling you, and you also look at the trends.
Is there any relationship now between your Pan-African Youth Forum and the EU Youth?
We do. We do partner, and unfortunately not as much as before, but we need to renew this partnership. We do have disagreement on some topics.
Of course.
We do not agree on everything, and perhaps for the future of this relationship, for European to respect African youth, if by any chance African youth decide to side with Trump, with Putin, or with Xi Jinping, it is our right to do so. And we shouldn't be sanctioned for that. We should be perhaps encouraged to take another road. And I know that a lot of elders have foundation for themselves. I think it's very important for the elders to start investing in the next politicians of the continent, not just the business people. We're talking about writing policies, the best policies for the two continents. It's very important for the elders to help bright young Africans get in power. bright young Europeans gaining power. So
Get to the table.
Absolutely. Well, not just to the table. We're all at the tables, but we need to be deciding as well. You know, it's not just being at the table. I think it's also important to calling the shots for today, for tomorrow, so that we can prepare the next generation coming as well.
Well, I know that one of the things Nelson Mandela made clear when he brought the elders together in 2007 was that we have to bring hope. And, you know, we're in a moment where we have to dig deep to find that hope again. And let me just recall being on a panel a few years ago in the United States, a social good conference with Archbishop Tutu. He was then chair of the elders. And it was a panel, a room full of young people. And when Archbishop Tutu is in front of young people, he waves his arms and he shows his affection. He believes in them in a real way, and they sense it, and they respond. And he was doing this. And we were being moderated by an American journalist, and she said, "Archbishop Tutu, why are you such an optimist?" And he looked at her and he shook his head and he said, "No, I'm not an optimist. I'm a prisoner of hope." And I remember those words, and they really hit me quite deeply, and I've thought a lot about them since then. And the truth is, the glass may not be half full. There may only be a tiny bit in the glass. But you work with that. You make that grow a bit. You collaborate. You find the way. That's the sense of a prisoner of hope. If you take the climate problem, I view the results of the election overnight, we still don't know the full story, but it's looking pretty bleak, as being really, really worrying for the climate, because we haven't got the time. I happen to have a new hat. I'm a guardian of the planetary boundaries. There are 9 planetary boundaries, the work of Johan Rockström, and there are about 20 of us now who are guardians globally, and we're supposed to actually take the science, as bleak and worrying as it is, that we have very little time between now and 2030 to radically change course. And the trouble is now we're going to have a block in the United States at the leadership level. It'll be the old story. There'll be a lot of people who say we are still in. A lot of business, a lot of states, governors, etc., will say we're still in, which is the hope. But still, it will be a bleak time. But it is really important. At this point in time, what gives you most hope?
My mother.
And you told me she's a bit of a fan of mine.
Yes, oh, she loves you. She's now Minister of Human Rights of DRC, and she loves Mary. And
she's in Geneva, where the Universal Periodic Review of the DRC is taking place. Yeah, that's good.
She presented yesterday. I was there, and I had to beg her to come, and she said, "If it's Mary, you're going." So I had to fly in last night. I'm flying back tonight. But what gives me hope, it's perhaps this type of exchange, what we have. You know, I'm a lot with young people, both in Europe, because I live here for a very long time, and also in the continent. And I'm always very happy when we have this type of gatherings where we can speak freely. And you know, I mean, the Africa Foundation, the Friend of Europe, and Mo Ibrahim Foundation, they've been very supportive of young people and giving them the platform to express themselves. And from what I'm hearing, the elders also are doing so. So what's giving us hope is to see that our leaders, those who have led us until now, are actually opening the doors for us to ensure that the future is bright, not just for us, but for the generation before.
Well, can I challenge you, because I think we're out of time, can I challenge you? 2017 was the last time that you had a proper relationship that led to the Abidjan document between the Pan-African youth, African youth, and the European youth. I challenge you to have a new one in 2025. Will you do that?
We can try, absolutely.
No, not just try.
Just try.
Do it.
All right.
Okay.
Calling upon all the founders and supporters of African Youth.
Okay.
Thank you very much.